The final round of the 2019 BRDC British Formula 3 Championship is only a few moments away. The championship, though, has been decided in the favour of Clement Novalak. Well, I was going to say a brilliant drive. A fortunate drive, I think, is the best way to describe it, in race number 2 earlier on, was enough for him to seal the deal. So now we can forget about the points to an extent and just enjoy the final 12 laps of racing, because it should be, if the first 2 races this weekend are anything to go by, a very, very entertaining 12 laps of racing. The grid has been set by the second fastest times in qualifying yesterday morning, and it will therefore be the man who has sadly missed out on the championship, Jonathan Hoggard, that has the pole position. There's Ayrton Simmons, who was a runner-up in race number 2 earlier on, the reverse grid encounter, and he'll be looking to try and launch himself from 4th on the grid to possibly challenge for another race victory. Hoggard then on pole position with Kian Jewis alongside him, Fortek and Douglas sharing the front row. Yulista Pauv and Ayrton Simmons are on row number 2, in the first of the Chris Dittman cars. Then it's Manuel Maldonado and Neil Verhagen for Double R Racing that are on row number 3 together, with Sassakorn Chimenkohl and Caelan Frederick, who was in the thick of most of the battling in race number 2. He lines up 8th on the grid. Then the champion-elect Clement Novalak 9th on the grid, with 2 fresh tyres on his Carlin Motorsport car, with Hampus Eriksson rounding out the top 10. Then Lucas Pettersson and Pavan Ravichanka 11th and 12th respectively on the grid, ahead of Chris Wright, who started towards the sharp end in race 2 before falling back, and Nazim Azman, who was our race 2 winner. Josh Mason, meanwhile, comes from the very back of the grid in the Lannon car, and we're looking to try and move forward from there. So we've had 2 races. First one won by Hoggard, the reverse grid race won by Nazim Azman. And that all means that Clement Novalak comes into this race on 488 points, with Jonathan Hoggard on 447. That is a difference of 41 points, with 35 still left on the table. So Hoggard cannot win the championship. However, he's only 10 points ahead of Ayrton Simmons, and Ayrton Simmons starts only a few places behind him. So for second place in the championship, it could, in theory, still change. And so that's going to be where the majority of our attention, I think, is directed as far as championship points are concerned, but that will only become relevant if Simmons gets himself ahead of Hoggard, and then even then he needs to try and get a few cars between them if he possibly can. But Simmons is up there towards the sharp end, 4th on the grid. Clement Novalak, meanwhile, will be very grateful that he wrapped up the title with a race to spare, because he didn't qualify particularly well yesterday. He starts all the way down in 9th position, and Novalak, there he is, look, the blue car with the fluorescent orange highlights, is going to have a lot of work to do just to survive the first few corners. We've seen in the past here at Donington Park that the run through Red Gate and the crane curves and the old hairpin on lap 1 can often lead to a little bit of argy-bargy, and the last thing Novalak would have needed was to get caught up in any of that, with the championship still on the table and Jonathan Hoggard on pole position. But that, it would appear, is not necessarily going to be a situation that we see arise here. There is the 26 car, Neil Verhagen. He'll line up 6th on the grid. As far as tyres are concerned, everybody is on quite well-used tyres, with the exception of Ayrton Simmons, who's on 4 lightly scrubbed tyres. So that maybe will play into his advantage as far as trying to take this second place in the championship away from Hoggard is concerned. And Clement Novalak, the championship leader, who saved himself 2 fresh tyres in the eventuality that he had to make progress in this race to wrap up the title, but he should now just be able to use those to consolidate maybe a solid top 10 position. Here we go then, for the final time in 2019, the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship about to burst into life. Jonathan Hoggard and Kian Jewis on the front row together get an even start. Yulista Pauv is away quickly though and tries to get up the inside of Jewis. Can't do it though. Hoggard will lead into Redgate corner. Ayrton Simmons already on the attack. There goes around the outside of Yulista Pauv for 3rd position. Simmons trying to get forward, but he's elbowed off the road. And Ayrton Simmons, new tyres or not, will have no grip on the green stuff. Bounces back on the track, but well down the order, possibly outside the top 10. And that, unfortunately, spells disaster as far as his chances of taking second in the title are concerned. In fact, he's fallen well behind even the rapid starting Clement Novalak, who appears to have gained a position or 2 here at the start. 3 Starkies, where it all went wrong for Jonathan Hoggard and Clement Novalak in race number 2, when the 2 of them banged wheels at high speed. Both of them went off the circuit, but it was Hoggard that rejoined further behind and then had to make a pit stop, unfortunately, due to grass in the radiators. This time, they're all safely through. And there, the number 8 machine of Caelan Frederick trying to get up alongside his Carlin teammate, Clement Novalak, who I reckon is into 7th place. So 2 places gained already for Novalak. He might lose one here to Frederick, though, who goes to the outside of him into the chicane. Novalak having none of it, though, fends him off. Then it's number 24 next behind Hampus Eriksson. and the rest of them filing through the chicane at high speed. So number 3, Jonathan Hoggard leads the way. Dewis second and DePauw in third position, and Ayrton Simmons, I think, will not be particularly happy with the way that he was treated by Ulysse DePauw at Redgate Corner, but it is the right, in a way, of the car on the inside to use all of the track. If you're going to go around the outside, you have to be prepared for that to maybe end in tears, and indeed it did. So Ayrton Simmons, the one that lost all the ground, he will, though, have good pace, so should be able to overtake a few cars. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, though, to overtake around the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. That's a nice move, though, on the inside of Lucas Pettersson, and that will put Ayrton Simmons back into the top 10. So he's in 10th position now, which will score him 11 points, but it's irrelevant unless he's ahead of Jonathan Hoggard, who at the moment is ahead of everybody else. He leads them through the old hairpin. Pettersson a little bit slow down the Craners as a result of having lost that place at Redgate, and so Pavan Ravichanka briefly moved up to challenge, but he's then slow off the old hairpin, so Nazim Azman pulls alongside him, and the race 2 winner around the outside into McLean's, I think, will go through here. Yeah, he's left just enough room by Ravichanka, and so Nazim Azman into 12th position, took his second win of the year earlier on today, both of which have been reversed grid race victories though, but as we can see there, he's got some good racecraft and some good speed as well on his day. Now, this is the battle for the lead then. Hoggard not escaping here from Kieran Dewis, who set the fastest first sector of anybody, but in the second sector, Hoggard was quicker than anybody else, so it's sort of evened out so far over the course of the lap. Dewis with a big lock-up into the Melbourne hairpin, and that runs the risk of flat spotting that tyre, and it's early in the day to be doing that as well, but Hoggard turns into the hairpin, still in front, takes a very wide line. That was very trusting there, that Kieran Dewis wasn't going to have a stab at getting up the inside. Neil Verhagen, by the way, is the man who is into 4th, having started 6th on the grid. He got ahead of Manuel Maldonado off the line and then took advantage of Ayrton Simmons' grassy moment at the first corner. There is Simmons, look, turning into Redgate, trying now to chase down the 24 of Hampus Eriksson. And then the 3 at the back are Pavan Ravichanka, who's had a moment somewhere because he was right with Nazim Azman. He's dropped 2.8 seconds back by the line. And then Josh Mason and Chris Wright at the tail end of the field. Mason gaining a place on that lap as well. So quite a lot of changing positions from 10th place on back, but the top 9 cars as they were. Fastest lap is set by Kieran Dewis, a 1:26.469, but that's quite a long way off the sort of pace, about a second and a half off the ultimate pace, you'd have to say, on fresh tyres anyway. But we know that both of those two are on worn tyres. They get a limited amount of tyres that they can use over the course of the weekend, so at some point you have to run on old rubber, and those two, like most of the field in fact, have run out of tyres essentially by the end of the day, so we don't expect the lap tyres to be quite as quick at this stage, but still, there's more pace to be had than that. The screeching of tyres there was Kieran Dewis, who I think has flat spotted that tyre because he keeps on locking it up, but he's still having a go at Jonathan Hoggard despite that possible flat spot, and he is alongside the race leader into the final turn. He's on the outside line though. Behind, it looked like Verhagen was up the inside of Ulysse DePauw. Let's see who appears in third. It is now Verhagen, so he's gone past Ulysse DePauw then. That was a nice move on the way in, but it's game on for the race lead. Kieran Dewis forcing Hoggard to defend into Redgate Corner, goes to the outside line, tries to go right round the outside. That doesn't work, so he cuts back to the late apex, trying to carry the speed down the Craner curves, but Hoggard is just about fending him off. Dewis, though, looks the quicker of the two at this stage. He's in the tow, down the Craners. The old hairpin is a potential overtaking opportunity, but a risky one. He goes for it anyway, backs out of it, trying to avoid contact. That's the last part of the circuit you want to be banging wheels, and Jonathan Hoggard fends him off, holds on to the race lead. Behind them, I think Ulysse DePauw has lost more ground because he's not in 4th anymore. I reckon that that's Maldonado that's into P4. Let's hang back and see. Yes, it is Maldonado, and then it's Chimengal. So there is Ulysse DePauw. He's behind Clement Novalak now, so Novalak into the top 6. This has been a good drive from the champion-elect. Through Coppice they go. He's found a way past Caleb Frederick, or he's fended off Caleb Frederick, I should say, and now got the car of Ulysse DePauw between them. So Clement Novalak putting in a champion's drive here so far, making up more places, I think I'm right in saying, than pretty much anybody else at the moment. We're only on lap 4 of the race. The leading two getting away. There's dust in the background. Someone's been out wide onto the dirt. It might have been Hampus Eriksson because he's under pressure from Simmons. And, well, Ulysse DePauw not under pressure from Caleb Frederick. Frederick simply drives up the inside and goes past him. So Caleb Frederick moving up an extra spot into 7th too. So not a good lap this for Ulysse DePauw, who a lap and a half ago was in 3rd, or a lap ago in fact was in 3rd. It was this corner at which he lost that 3rd place, and he's heading for the pit lane. So there's an issue, I think, for DePauw. I don't think there was contact when he lost the position to Verhagen. I don't know whether we've got that anywhere, but Neil Verhagen seemed to go through cleanly, so maybe there was some contact after that, which explains why he then started losing more places. That elevates Ayrton Simmons into 9th spot now, so the next target is Hampus Eriksson for 8th position. There is the number 55 car. The Douglas Motorsport squad are assessing the rear of the car, but it looks almost like it's more mechanical, engine related, rather than damaged suspension or wheels or whatnot. Hogarth, meanwhile, sets the fastest lap out in front to 126.166, so he is now getting away slightly from Dewis, but only to the tune of 0.6 of a second. He was 0.4 quicker on the previous lap, so he gained most of that gap on the 4th lap of the race. The big battle pack here then really is for 4th place. Maldonado, Chiemengol, Novalak, Frederick, Eriksson, Simmons and Pettersson, and in fact even Nazim Azman and Ulysse de Pauw was in this group, but of course he's now dived for the pit lane, so big train of cars here. Novalak still stuck behind Sassakorn Chiemengol for the moment, but he looks a bit quicker than the hill speed car. That is the only hill speed car racing this weekend as well, so Sassakorn would love to get them a podium if he could, but that's looking a little less likely perhaps at the moment. Leaders go back through, and a new fastest lap for Hogarth again, so he ekes out another 300ths over Kieran Dewis. He's pretty much matching him actually, which is impressive given the fact that he's running in the dirty air of the race leader. So Hogarth from Dewis 0.6 of a second, Verhagen a further 2.2 seconds back in 3rd, and he's got 1.5 second cushion over Manuel Maldonado, a cushion that grew by 0.4 on the previous lap. Almost at the halfway mark though of this final race of the season, and for Hogarth and Dewis it's really just about trying to end the season as high up the order as they possibly can. Kieran Dewis had an outside chance of catching Ayrton Simmons. Now let's do the maths on that one then, because Simmons in 3rd in the championship and Dewis in 4th came into this race just 28 points apart. So if, for example, Dewis was able to get through, then I reckon, yeah, Simmons should still be doing enough. As long as he's in the top 10, it should be enough to hang on to 3rd in the championship, even if Dewis gets past Hogarth and takes the race victory, which is all academic because he's not done that yet, but he is fractionally quicker on this lap, about 0.2 up in the 1st sector, a 10th down in the 2nd, so that's still a net gain, and when we're dealing with a gap that's only just over half a second anyway, every little helps. And Kieran Dewis with another lock, he's probably flat spotted the other tyre now on the front of the car as well. Into Goddard's comes the 4th place battle then, Manuel Maldonado, who was the highest place driver from the championship last year that stuck around for another go this season. He was 7th in the championship last year, and the top 6 drivers from the 2018 season have all moved on to other things now, so Manuel will be a little disappointed therefore that he is only 6th in the points coming into this race. He was only 5 points behind Neil Verhagen coming into this race though, so Maldonado would have been very disappointed to see Verhagen going ahead of him a few laps ago, because that now hands that position to Neil. They're way too far behind the top 4 to catch them though, so that's that one pretty much settled as well. Novalak taking things easy, I think. It's good in a way that he's gone out there to race at all, because quite often when the championship's decided before the last race of the season, the champion-elect sometimes elects not to go out and race, because if they were to get involved in contact or something like that, get a penalty, then they could be docked championship points in theory, and that would be disastrous actually, with Hogarth leading the way. So there is still some pressure on the shoulders of Clement Novalak here not to do anything stupid. If he were to be disqualified, for example, for contact, then Hogarth would be champion, so he potentially could be champion anyway. He's docked any points, so Novalak needs to just take things easy here. If he has a chance to attack Sassakorn Chiemengol or Manuel Maldonado behind him, then he will go for it, I'm sure. Hampus Eriksson, meanwhile, is now behind Ayrton Simmons and was nearly behind Lucas Pettersson as well. So Simmons has gone through into 8th position, down to 9th for Eriksson, but Lucas Pettersson is in the slipstream and might be tempted to have a go here into Redgate Corner. Thought about it, but Eriksson was late enough on the brakes to deter him from actually going for the move. And they come out of Redgate Corner then still in the same order. Jonathan Hogarth with another new fastest lap, but he's only ever a few hundredths of a second quicker than Kieran Dewis. The gap goes out to 3/4 of a second now out in front, but that's still not a big margin. And again, in the 1st sector, Dewis is fractionally quicker, so pretty much any advantage that Hogarth gained on the previous lap disappears again in the 1st sector of the next one. Through the lanes goes Simmons then, and then behind him, Hampus Eriksson starting to regroup now, getting back away from Lucas Pettersson. here are the leaders, and I reckon that gap may have crept down again slightly. Yes, a purple first and second sector for Jewis here, so he's on course for a new fastest lap, and in doing so has taken a couple of tenths already out of Hoggard on this one. So the gap is going to come down slightly, but then as they head into the final sector, it almost looks like Hoggard's got away from him again. Fourth place battle comes over the hill. The iconic Donington Park Grand Prix circuit shot that as they come over the hill into the Melbourne hairpin, where Maldonado makes a bit of a mistake, locks up and runs wide. And Sasakor Chimagol might have had an idea of getting up the inside into the next corner, but I'm sure that Maldonado will have defended that one. Leaders back through then. Is it a new fastest lap for Jewis? Yes, it is, but he again is only, well, less than a tenth of a second quicker than Hoggard. They are literally trading sector times here. Hoggard was almost a full tenth up in the final sector and negated most of the advantage that Jewis had taken over him in the first 2/3 of the lap. So Jewis does take the fastest lap. The gap is back under 7 tenths, but only fractionally. 0.691 is the gap, as you can see at the bottom of your screen, with Verhagen still third, Maldonado fourth, and Chimagol fifth, so there was no change there either. Novak sixth, Frederick seventh, and Simmons up to eighth, and is now almost on the tail of Caelan Frederick with those slightly fresher tyres, but he'll only really get the advantage of those fresher tyres in the early stages of the race. As we get now into the final third, which we are doing, there's not going to be as much of an extra bit of grip that those tyres are giving him. Jewis again is half a tenth up on the leader in the first sector, half a tenth up in the second sector. It's hard work this, isn't it? Trying to get within striking range. I think if he can get close enough, he'll have a go at Hoggard, regardless of the fact that Hoggard is a decent distance out in front at the moment, but Simmons will want to try and get past him. But even if he wins the race, sorry, Jewis will want to get past him, excuse me. But even if he wins the race, that won't quite be enough, I don't think, for Simmons to lose third place. So for Jewis, it's not really about points, it's just about trying to get another race victory. Jewis has only had one this year, which came in the first race at Silverstone last time out, the second visit of the year for the British F3 Championship to Silverstone. And in fact, I tell a lie, sorry, it was race 3 at Brands Hatch. He was second at Silverstone, and that was only his sixth podium appearance of the season, whereas compared to people like Jonathan Hoggard, who seem to be on the podium almost every race, that's why he's that little bit further down in the championship. On that lap, by the way, the gap went out by another tenth, so it's much of a muchness, really. There is Caelan Frederick then, with Ayrton Simmons just 4 tenths behind him at the line. So Simmons continuing to make some progress, but he's finding it hard going, unlike in the reversed grid race where you have a real difference in speed between the cars at the front and the cars at the back. In these more traditional races, it is a little harder to overtake. It's a high-speed circuit, so that gives you some slipstreaming options, but you can't really follow all that closely through the high-speed corners. However, there was a mistake there for Frederick. He got a wheel on the grass halfway through Coppice, and so Simmons is a bit closer now. A good run through the chicane would possibly open up the opportunity for an overtake into the Melbourne hairpin. I don't think he's close enough, but if he can get a good exit from here, there's another hairpin coming up at the top of the hill at Goddard, and the exit from Melbourne is crucial because, as you can see, it's a steep uphill climb. Up through the gears again before hitting the brakes hard, and is Simmons close enough? No, not really. He's just teeing this up at the moment. He needs to get a really good exit from one of these tight corners, get a good toe down the next straight, and then try and get the out-braking manoeuvre done into the next corner, but he's not close enough into Redgate either, so Simmons, who you can see was braking later there, he closed in underneath the rear wing of Caelan Frederick, but wasn't able to get past, and so Caelan holds on to 7th place for now. They're losing ground, though, to the top 6. There's a full second now between Novak in 6th and Frederick in 7th. Hoggard, as you can see, almost matched by Jewis again on that lap. 1:25.635 for Hoggard and 1:25.674 for Jewis. So what's that, a 400th of a second advantage for Hoggard on that lap. The gap then just creeping up though, isn't it? Even if he goes up by a tenth a time, that still is over a second by the end of the race that he'll have picked up. So it doesn't look as though Jewis is going to get within striking distance now, unfortunately. Back out of the chicane again, into the Melbourne hairpin for the penultimate time. This race has absolutely flown by. Only one more lap to go then after this one. And Kieran Jewis, having started from the outside of row 1, the Formula 4 graduate from last year, is definitely going to be a bright prospect, I think, in single-seater racing in the future. It waits to be seen whether or not he will come back next year to try and challenge for a title in this championship, and likewise Jonathan Hoggard, or whether they decide to move on. But as I said in race 2, having British Formula 3 Championships or even race wins and podiums on your CV all of a sudden makes you an awful lot more employable for single-seater teams further up the single-seater racing ladder. And that's why we tend to get quite a high turnover of drivers, but of course it's such a popular championship that there's always a queue of drivers waiting to replace them the year after. So it may be that some of these drivers are making maybe their final British Formula 3 appearance, but they'll be replaced by the next host of young up-and-coming stars. And in 5 or 6 years' time, maybe even less for some of them, we might be seeing these drivers gracing the Formula 1 grid. That's certainly been done before. And we've seen an awful lot of the current Formula 1 grid coming through the British Formula 3 ranks at some point in recent memory. Daniel Ricciardo being one of the most recent British Formula 3 champions to then go on and enjoy much success in Formula 1. Will that be what we see from Hoggard and Dewis in the future, I wonder? Well, it looks as though their battle this afternoon is over. I don't think there's any way Dewis is going to get back at Hoggard, but Hoggard will be very, very happy to have got this victory, I suppose. It will be his 6th win of the year. That's comfortably more than anybody else. He will miss out on the championship by, in the end, not many points, but it is a race victory for Jonathan Hoggard. A familiar sight, that is. Cian Dewis in 2nd place, and 3rd place will go the way of Neil Verhagen, and he's only had 3 of those earlier on this year. But Clement Novalak, in 6th position with a really strong drive there as well, is now confirmed as the 2019 champion. It was provisional coming into that race, but he has now wrapped it up anyway. So Clement Novalak, with a good drive from 9th on the grid to 6th place at the end, pulled off some nice overtakes too. That was a nice way to round out the championship for him. But Hoggard, the winner, did everything he could. He knew that the championship was out of reach realistically, but a race victory is a nice way for him to end the season. Dewis likewise on the podium, and Neil Verhagen 3rd. Maldonado, by the way, was 4th. Chimengal 5th ahead of Novalak. Then Frederick. Simmons got up to 8th, but no further, and he'll be ruining that bit of wheel banging he had with Ulysse de Pauw at the start. Well, there is confirmation of that result. Hoggard, Dewis, Verhagen and Maldonado, with Chimengal 5th, then Novalak, Frederick, Simmons, Hampus Eriksson and Lucas Pettersson, the 2 Swedish drivers getting themselves together there at the back end of the top 10. Then it was Malaysian Nazim Asman, Pavan Ravishankar was next, then Josh Mason, Chris Wright and Ulysse de Pauw retired into the pit lane, as we saw. Whether or not that was as a result of that contact that he had at the first corner with Ayrton Simmons, I know not, but either way, he is our only retirement actually of the weekend. In the previous 2 races, all 15 drivers got to the end, but this time around, Ulysse de Pauw, unfortunately, does not. So, British Formula 3 action then is done for 2019. It's been a stellar season, though. We've had, I think I'm right in saying, more winners than we've ever had, or certainly in recent memory, and almost certainly more podium finishes as well. It's been wide open. The cars, of course, are all identical. They're prepared by different teams, but they're all really professional teams as well. You know, Chris Dittman Racing, RR, Fortec, Carlin. They're all top teams in single-seater racing, and they all know what they're doing. So the cars are much for muchness. The drivers very evenly matched as well. And with the introduction in recent years of this reversed grid 2nd race and the bonus points on offer for that as well, it guarantees that we get some really genuinely cracking racing. Formula 3 racing, I think, gets a bit of bad stick in the UK sometimes, but this generation of Formula 3 car does allow you to follow each other an awful lot more closely than you used to be able to. The trouble is the drivers are all so evenly matched now that finding an advantage that's big enough for you to actually make an overtake isn't always easy, but it has been done. And casting my mind back to Alton Park at the start of the season, that 3rd race was one of the best races I've ever seen at Alton Park, and that's a circuit where, in theory, you can't overtake in anything. So Formula 3 drivers should be proud of the show they put on this year. Good to see that a lot of spectators, the vast majority of them, I'd say, have stuck around to the end of the day here at Donington Park. The British GT race may have been finished, but they paid their money, they want to get their money's worth, and it's well worth them sticking around because there are still championships to be decided this afternoon. The British Formula 3 one may have been wrapped up earlier on this morning, but they still witnessed a very close race there between our youngsters in the Formula 3 cars, and 1 or 2 of them taking this lull between races as an opportunity to relax. But it's a knowledgeable crowd here at Donington as well. They all tend to follow these championships reasonably closely. They know who's who, they know who the 4 men and women are, and it's good to see a lot of them sticking around to the end of the day and enjoying this autumnal sunshine that we're now seeing. Actually, there was a threat of rain about an hour ago, but that seems to have subsided, and it's very, very mild indeed here at Donington this afternoon. which no doubt is helping to lift everybody's mood rather. Well, there's plenty of elevated moods down in the paddock because the podium presentation's not that far away. There's Jonathan Hoggard, then the race winner. More race wins than anyone else in 2019 and more podium appearances as well. It was those two non-finishes, one at Snetterton and one here in the reverse grid race earlier on this season, that unfortunately rather scuppered his championship hopes. Cian Dewis comes home in second position, takes care to place his helmet very carefully on the nose cone of the car before shaking the hand of the man with whom they were trading sector times all race long. The gap at the end was only 7/10. It never got more than 8/10, I don't think, during the entire duration of the race. An extremely close battle, and one slip-up from Jonathan Hoggard would have been enough, no doubt, to allow Dewis through. But in the end, it didn't come, and actually the gap that they pulled out over Neil Verhagen in third was 5 seconds, just to show their level of dominance. So Cian Dewis and Jonathan Hoggard should be very proud as well of their performances this season, and they both back up their 1-2 finish from race number 1 as well yesterday afternoon. So that's been a solid final weekend for them. Dewis will not quite, though, do enough to move ahead of Ayrton Simmons by getting into the top 10. Ayrton at least managed to secure that third place in the points, but of course he was way behind Hoggard, so Hoggard equally hangs on to second position. Well, I think we can hand down to the podium where we can have a word with our winningest driver of 2019, Jonathan Hoggard.
Jonathan, that's a fantastic victory for you there.
Yeah, no, really good race. Cian put me under quite a lot of pressure midway through. Had a bit of a lock-up at Melbourne hairpin, which gave him a real chance, but held him off well and then drove away from there.
So after the disappointment of race 2, it looks like you're smiling again, which is good to see.
Yeah, definitely. I think race 2 was a bit disappointing. Lost the championship, but I think it would have been tough anyway to get close. You know, Clement's driven really well all season. I think I've had a really good season. Most wins, most poles, fastest laps, laps led, all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm really happy with how it's gone.
And there's another prize heading your way as well, isn't there? What's that?
I think it's the Daytona drive. So really happy I managed to secure that. It's going to be a great opportunity next year. So really looking forward to it.
Thanks very much indeed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Jonathan, as well. And good to see that he's got something to smile about here at the end of what's not been the most positive of weekends, but 2 race victories is a good weekend. He just left himself with too much to do to be able to challenge for the title. So that's your Formula 3 action on track done with, and the spectators are waiting eagerly for their next race. Thank you for joining us, though. If you've watched several of the Formula 3 races this year, I hope you've enjoyed the season, and they'll be back, I'm sure, with a new crop of drivers to entertain us all in 2020.
And all the cars now on the grid. So we'll go, first of all, to the Formula 3 podium. Alistair.
Yes, thank you. We got that.